Hello, and welcome to Manga Splaining, a show where we recommend great manga to people who haven't read much manga before. Hosted by me, Deb Aoki, David Brothers, Christopher Woodrow Butcher, and Chip Zdarsky. Follow along with our show notes and reading lists at mangasplaining.com. And this week, one of my favorite types of things to talk about, that's cat manga. Now, of course, we've done cat manga before. We've done Cheese Sweet Home, but we're going back. We're going way back. I mean, in manga terms, of course. We're going to the first cat manga I think I've read, which is What's Michael? What's Michael by Makoto Kobayashi. It's published by Dark Horse Comics. It's been around for a while. It's been around so long that it is now reissued in a super fat cat edition, which encompasses apparently 5 volumes, 5 very slim volumes of the adventures of a very, I guess, well, he's an orange cat with a lot of flavor. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
He's a ginger with lots of spice. So I guess we should start off by reading the back of the books. We can kind of ground our listeners in what exactly we're going to embark upon right now. True to life daily cat scenarios and off the walls outlandish feline fantasies combined in this epic manga collection. Epic is not a word I'd use for this, but that's okay. Makoto Kobayashi's hilarious series returns in a set of oversized volumes, starting with our first Fat Cat edition, which contains the out-of-print original, What's Michael, volumes 1 to 6. 6 volumes! Whoa, that is over 500 pages of tumultuous fun, include the out-of-print volumes Michael's Album, Living Together, Off the Deep End, Michael's Mambo, Michael's Favorite Spot, and A Hard Day's Life. Introduction by the award-winning translator and scholar Zach Davidson. He actually translated Cat plus Gamer.
Oh, okay. Was that Dark Horse?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Feline fun and turmoil as Michael wreaks havoc on his humans' lives. I'm not sure if that's the best description of What's Michael, but let's go with that.
Well, we've got a whole hour-long podcast to give our take. So if you're listening, Dark Horse Marketing Department, please condense what we say down to the Fat Cat Edition Volume 4 text.
All right. I mean, obviously, I'm in the pocket for cats, and I know, like, I've seen Chip's, let's say, housemate make a couple of appearances in the background once or twice.
Mr. Sweet Pea, yes.
Mr. Sweet Pea. I'm going to throw this at Chip then. As a cat owner, or friend of cats, what did you think of What's Michael?
I liked it. It was super charming. Obviously, it's extremely well illustrated, especially the cats. So that lends a lot of humor to it because the cat's kind of depicted a bit more realistically than, say, a Garfield or a Heathcliff. So when the cat gets up to kind of wacky situations, it's just inherently funnier. Reading them, I was kind of fascinated by the fact that I kept thinking about Garfield for obvious reasons, and I kept thinking, like, most of these works as a 3-panel gag. Like, even though they're multiple pages and Michael, like, running around and doing stuff, like, you can kind of distill a lot of these to just, like, little 3-panel or 4-panel gag strips. But letting them breathe like this made them a lot more charming. The only thing that kind of threw me off was just the fact that Michael is like a lot of these stories kind of change the environment a bit. Like there's not, I don't even know how to say it. Like, the reality changes from story to story. Like, there were stories of him kind of entering into the home life, or him actually being the cat of somebody else, or him actually being kind of more in a world where, like, he's playing baseball with dogs. Like they keep changing. Like, the 2 human owners seem to be pretty consistent, but even those situations kind of change.
Where sometimes he's got different owners.
Yeah, or even those owners are different, and how he is with them. That took a little bit of getting used to, but clearly it's just like a template just to do whatever the author wants with Michael. So yeah, it's super charming. I don't think ultimately it's for me, and I don't even know why. I think it's just more one of those things like, oh, this is adorable. I'll probably never read another one again, but I'm happy I did, and I would absolutely recommend it to kids. I think it's a really charming book for kids. Yeah. Those are my kind of initial things.
Sounds good. David, you have any thoughts on What's Michael?
Yeah, I came to What's Michael as a kid, like late
Oh.
90s. I got into Super Manga Blast by Dark Horse Comics,
Oh.
their manga anthology. It's like 48 pages or something. It felt like a very good value for how much you had to spend on them. And I wasn't really reading superhero stuff at the time because there were Onslaught and Clone Saga stuff and some Spider-Man and X-Men. So revisiting these was really nice in a way. And it made me also realize that a couple of my favorite jokes are probably in later volumes. The extended thriller sequence when they do the thriller dance. And Dracula chapter, which I believe we've talked about on the podcast at least 2 or 3 times before. It's super funny. But yeah, this is very much up my alley. It's really Adult Swim in terms of vibe, like the way it's written. Like it's not super edgy, but it's edgier than Cheese Sweet Home. But like it's written, like Chip was saying, in a way where they'll take one idea, like they'll have like, maybe 2 or 3 jokes and then make it like a 6-page story. Something else I liked about this and I didn't expect going in is that it's like an inadvertent manga time capsule because the lettering changes from
Oh my God.
like the dominant like 90s manga style, like the Studio Proteus style, to the more modern style. And I thought that was really fascinating because I loved, while I was reading, I was like, oh, on the podcast, like I'm talking about like Studio Proteus, it would be cool. Like, this is how I think manga should look. This is my favorite vibe. And then it switched in one chapter and I was like, oh, and this is like how it looks now. And it's kind of interesting that they're in the same book, like almost back to back like that.
Yeah.
What are the differences, that you can pull out or you can kind of show us an example of?
The sound effects, most especially. Let me find... It was towards the end when they started using kind of more font-y sound effects versus things that are hand-drawn. And, it's much cheaper to do like a font or something like that. It takes a lot less work to adjust the page.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at 443. There's that meow and whips.
Those initial pages are hand lettered for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a different vibe for sure. All that the old Studio Proteus stuff had just the most amazing lettering.
Yeah, 443 is actually a great example because it has a few like quirks that I think are really annoying but ultimately inconsequential. Like when people say like, oh, you have to like crossbar I in lettering. I think it looks better when you do it like the right way.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, the sound effects they just look like fonts. They look the same every time. And if you flip to any page between like say 100 and 200, page 184, they don't have quite the same like identical vibe. Like there's more variation in the letters and that sort of thing.
There's a really good page that I noticed. I don't have it noted here, but I'll put it in the show notes when I find it later, where within the word balloon, the like fonts kind of are overlapping on top of each other and stuff. And it's the kind of thing that you really, as a letterer, are really discouraged from doing these days with computer lettering. But in hand lettering, especially when the person who's lettering it is, paid really well and can afford to actually spend the time on it.
With their Tom Warzakowski.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's something that the lettering gets that's actually
Look
really
at
just
102
crazy.
when there's a yowling.
Yeah, 102 looks fantastic. You can see like the lettering has clearly been pasted in, like the wump and the thud in panel 3.
Yeah.
But this is just sort of, there's like not a hand drawn. There's like a made aspect to it. It's different in the computer lettered version.
Yep.
And I think I prefer this because it feels more... I mean, it's what I read when I was 14. It's probably a huge part of it, actually.
Yeah.
It's so expressive, right? Like the ooh is like has the different O's, and then on page 103 it's like the roar, it's like the R.
Yeah, there's
the
so
W's
much
are
variation. It's so different. Like it fits the art like a little better, I think.
So I got page 156 open, and you can see she's yelling at Michael, "Stop it! Don't you dare sharpen your claws there. That's expensive." And then "stop it, dare," and "expensive" are bolded. And then "expensive" even has like an underline to really like. When was the last time you saw underlining inside a word balloon, right? But then you flip to the end, and I got paid like 486 here. And the panel at the top, "What? Don't bury it. I got it for you to chew on, Bear." And it's like still bolded, like "what" and "bury" and "chew on," but just night and day for how it reads within the word balloon. And it's really a difference between hand lettering and fonts. I didn't expect to get so into the fonts, actually.
It's funny now that you talk about it. Like if you go to 460, there's a scene mostly with a dog, and like, yeah, the text of the dog is it's all over the map. Like they're clearly trying something by making things bigger and smaller, but none of it works together.
Yeah.
None of it flows. Like, and even the guy's text in the bottom left, where he's like, "the nice doggy," like the mixed case, the spacing, all of it is pretty off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's one of those things. I know, like I'm kind of dogging on it a little bit, but this is much closer to the modern manga editing style, I suppose.
Yeah.
It kind of like Viz, Kodansha, Denpa, we all kind of share a few basics, I would say. But like the old school stuff looks so cool. And I think that's fundamentally what it comes down to. It's like you look at it and you get a reaction from it versus the more modern stuff where you kind of look at it and it just sort of sinks. It's the old thing about like, oh, lettering should be invisible, but this is like lettering that enhances the vibe, I think.
It's invisible. It's funny because like the page I'm looking at, like it's not invisible at all because it's so off. Like it's jarring, right?
Oh, the dog one?
The modern stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So even though the earlier, the more hand lettering stuff is like well designed, that actually makes it feel invisible. It just makes it feel part of the page. Like it's so considered with everything else that's happening. Whereas later on, it's not. It's like very much an afterthought.
And I'm wondering if we had read like that last book. I assume it was the last book that was lettered that way as like a paperback. I wonder if we'd read that separately, if it would still feel jarring if we didn't have the like 300 pages of Studio Proteus style lettering.
Yeah.
What's so amazing is that each chapter says volume 5, and it says this section was translated and lettered by Alan Gleason, Dana Lewis, Hisashi Kotobuki, Leah Seidman, Torrin Smith, and Ellen Winkler, and lettered by Amador Cisnero, Pat Duke, and Radio Comics, Tom
Orzakowski.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And Amy Stella. Like each chapter has like this lineup.
It was a weird time in comics. I want David to finish his thoughts before I jump in, though. But like the lettering is, you saying it's a time capsule, man. It is absolutely that, because this was such a long running translation from Dark Horse, where it would get picked up and then dropped again, a couple times. So big gaps. Maybe over a decade of work in this book. I'll have to go back and see when it actually serialized from Dark Horse. But yeah, it's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah. My thoughts, I mean, I'm pro What's Michael. When Monster Hunter World came out, which was like a really big hunting video game, but like you're hunting dragons and beasts and such, you get a cat like sidekick called a Palico, like Calico plus Pal. And I named mine What's Michael, like with exclamation point and a question mark. So I'm in the bag, let's say. And if I had to pick one thing that I really liked revisiting it after all these years, it's all the cat faces and all the dudes who look like Lionel Richie. Like this is legitimately one of those like.
Give me a page number. Who's the Lionel Richie guy?
Oh, it's one of the guys who really likes cats. Hang on. Because he had like the little mustache. He had like the curly hair. I'll find it and bring it up in the middle of Christopher's pitch.
All good. It was 1985. You got to cut people a break. He was the sex symbol of 1985.
The guy who like says, "We're here to see the cats, ma'am." This guy?
Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys. He shows up earlier in the book too. I was like, this is just Lionel Richie.
I love this scene in like 220, 221 where like they're coming to pick up the kittens and then they tilt their heads.
Just like the kitten does, but they're all like Yakuza. Like there's some legitimately great gags in What's Michael, but it is funny that the stuff that when we were talking about this book and picking it for the podcast, none of that was in this volume. It's 6 volumes of stuff. And I think it does get more surreal as it goes. The best example of that in the very last part of the book, there's a story where Michael is now a salaryman in a world of cats, and he like gets taken into like a girls' bar and gets sort of like robbed of all of his money and sent home. And then the last panel is them, flashing back to it's the cat owners going, well, that's what I think he's thinking about anyway. And they really are trying to play with the form, but they're still trying to like be like, well, this is just what the owners think is going on, and trying to have their cake and eat it too a little bit. But in later ones, he's literally just like protecting his owner from Dracula. Like it does get more and more surreal as it goes, which I think is one of the charms of it. And you do get some of that. Like the all cat business, the all cat board meeting is really quite funny. I love that. But yeah, overall, and I like the cartooning so much in this. It's like he has a really good gift for caricature. I found rereading this, especially in my head, it was always really strong. Like all the sort of types that are in Club 9, which is another book by Kobayashi, I really liked. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't think I'm on board with what Chip's saying that it's like for kids. I think that it is like one of those weird, not quite for kids, not quite for adults things that just sort of ends up in like manga magazines as like here's the 8 pages of cat manga this week's episode. But I don't know. I do think though, much like Pop Team Epic, I don't think sitting and reading this at a go was a good idea. I think this is a book that, at 600, almost 600 pages, dipping into and out of and picking up a story here and there and really sort of savoring it is a lot better than reading 600 pages in over 2 days. I think maybe I kind of ruined it for myself a little bit in that way. I wish I had savored it a bit more, but there's always volume 2 to like have on the shelf, pull down, read a couple of stories, chuckle to yourself and put it back. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts. Good caricature. I don't think it's for the kiddos, and I don't think you should power through it. I think you should take your time a little bit.
I like your point about the caricature because Lionel Richie's on 273.
Okay, here we go.
It was the private eye who receives a mysterious letter that turns out to be like the wrong letter.
Just the misdirected Cat Fancy magazine.
Yeah, I love Shaggy dog jokes, and he gets like so into it. For the first page of this one, I was like, okay, like come on, man, this is just very popular singer.
He looks like he looks like the guy that's in the Resistance with Kay and Akira that I'm secretly in love with her a little bit, but like drawn as if he's Lionel Richie because he's got the same vibe going on. Ryu, that's his name in Akira.
So wait, if Wes Michael were created today, David, who would the pop singer be? In
I would
place
love
of Lionel Richie.
The Weeknd.
That'd be so good.
Hard-boiled gumshoe The Weeknd.
That's perfect.
The gangster K in this is a caricature of Ken Takakura, who's like a famous Yakuza actor. Been a bunch of good movies.
Gangster M is kind of like Gogol 13, isn't he?
I was going to say.
I was trying to place who he was as well. Like he feels like a reference for sure. And Ken even has like the very strong cheekbone drawings. Like I love those long lines, makes him look so old. So like there's a lot of pop culture stuff in here that I think would be horrible to explain it using our pop culture icons, but because there's like some distance between us and them, this is okay. Like just imagine, I don't know, like Al Pacino as a cat person. Actually, that's pretty good.
Oh yeah. That'd be fun. What's the guy? The guy who's in that Fat Boy Slim video.
Christopher
Walken.
Yeah, that would actually be very believable.
Yeah,
he is that kind of like Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye vibe, like good cat chemistry.
Oh yeah.
The idea of him coming to pick up one of the kittens in a Christopher Walken voice, I've come for the kitten with, 3 or 4 more pauses in there. That's a good joke. That's a good joke right there.
You're like, please don't. It would sell it so well. But Deb, as a cat connoisseur, how do you feel about What's Michael? What was your take reading all these stupid stories again?
I mean, I always kind of knew that this guy knows cats. The poses and the situations they get into, like, how the cats will like lick their own nuts kind of thing. And they look really cute and very stupid at the same time. Or the way that cats will do things like they can't hide their emotions, like their ears will go back or their tail will fluff up. Every time I sneeze, my cat's tail just flops up like twice the size. Like it's like, you've lived with me for 8 months. I sneeze a lot. Get used to this. Like he just like runs for the hills. And the things that I guess what I really enjoy about that is like, it just shows a certain knowingness of like how silly cats can be. Like everyone kind of like, oh, I have a friend who, for example, hates cats because he goes, oh, cats are so standoffish and cats are so snobby. Like they're not like dogs. Dogs are, dogs just love you. Cats are snotty and it's like, no, cats are full of love. Also, they're not cool at all sometimes. They can be really stupid. And that's what makes them endearing. Like I'd read What's Michael many years ago in various ways. This is the first time I've got the cat version. I had never known until I got to the last page that it's based on a real cat.
Yeah, that's
wild. Yeah, same. Yeah.
I didn't know this at all.
And this cat is still on the loose somewhere, wreaking havoc.
Inspiring other mangaka.
It's kind of like, it reminds me of like, That Darn Cat. Where the cat goes to different houses and has different lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of accepted that Michael has different lives. It's just that it never, like now that Chip mentioned it, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that would be kind of confusing, huh? Because it's the same cat personality, but he has different lives and different families, and I don't know.
My touchstone for this was Looney Tunes more than anything. So it kind of made sense that the setting like changed a little bit or was outrageous every now and again. It kind of has that same format of like, we've got two really good jokes and we've got, however 10 minutes to play these out real fast. And I think this series definitely does a similar thing where like you get enough to like get the gist of a person, like, oh, this is a guy who's crazy about cats. And this is a cat who is sick of his crap. And then 6 pages later, you're all done. So it was almost, I was going to make a joke about like, I really couldn't grasp the story in this one, but I didn't really think that there was like an actual continuity between them outside of like the one family where he ends up having like a wife and kids and then mysteriously just one kid. I assume because kittens are hard to draw.
The one thing that kind of gave me the less light creeps was like, oh, like Michael is horny, like he's meowing. It's like, oh, so let's get him a girlfriend. So they get him a little girl cat, and then they keep spanking. He's like, no, not yet, dummy. She's too young.
Yeah,
it's like
that was a really weird episode.
It was so weird. The dad is like, no, we can't fix Michael. Like an affront to him that Michael would get his, his 1-2s like taken away, right? But I don't know. It's like maybe that was this time, but like you got to fix cats because otherwise they'll just keep popping out more cats. They
he
do
almost
that.
had like 12 kids over the course of this book. So
yeah, 6 ones. They probably should have fixed Michael, but yeah, it's kind of interesting what a time capsule this was in so many different ways. Like the original work taking place from like 85 to, I think the book says 85 to 88. So over 4 years, like the cartooning's still really crisp, and he's such his own creator that it doesn't feel too dated, I think, whereas a lot of 80s manga definitely has so many hallmarks of that time. It's not like Akira levels of not dated, but it's pretty good. And then on top of that, the time period of like when this was lettered and when this was basically serialized in English, where it was over a decade for this material. And the industry changed so much where computer lettering became the norm. Lettering rates kind of fell through the floor for letterers as well. Hand lettering used to be really like a full-time paying job. Orskowski I got to work with on a gig, and even when he switched to computer lettering, lamented it a little bit. But it also meant that, the underground, the indie presses could have really nice looking lettering on their books instead of it. I don't know. Have you ever read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 before they relettered it? It's not great. Computer lettering saves a lot of books if it's done even halfway competently. So
yeah. Oh, I wonder if that shift that you're taling about is partly why we value hand lettering so much these days, because it's become something that's become much more rare to see executed at like a very high level. Sort of like computer coloring. There was a big push like to give colorists more creative credit, creative freedom comics for a while.
Yeah. Be good if we paid them too. But
let's not go too far.
Yeah, come on. Right? Crazy talk.
Chip, you letter your own books, right? Since we're just talking about lettering this episode, you letter your own books, but you letter them computer-wise, or?
Yeah, I mean, I turned my handwriting into a font years ago.
Wow.
I did it so long ago that I don't actually know how to change it. like the program no longer exists, and I'm too old to learn a new program. So there's a few things about it I want to change, and I just can't. I don't think I'm a good letterer, but I'm just too much of a control freak. I kind of want to. I want to make sure it works with the design of the page.
Mhm.
Especially now that I'm writing and drawing a book, it's like, well, I want to be able to change it on the fly instead of changing it covertly, like what I would do to Matt on Sex Criminals.
It's funny. I just lettered a book, just lettered some pages, I guess, that were the lettering in the Japanese is hand drawn. It's hand lettered, and I kind of didn't. I went with CC Comic Crazy or Comic Craft Brian Boland, by the way, but I wanted a hand lettering font that was like that kind of worked with their lettering, but it was really tough. And most Japanese comics, we don't really put a lot of like actual Japanese comics up on the show notes or anything like that. But our lettered, not just with a font, but like a font. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it is like a solid black, very intense kind of computer font, computer lettering, and almost always was. Even before that, they would do like, I got to handle some really old comic pages once, and they would just have like laser printed letters pasted onto the board, so that human look that we look for in this artwork is just not part of the original manga ideal, I guess, like in the original
I think
work.
It's in the sound effects, though.
Oh, the sound effects are gorgeous, though.
Yeah.
Like having a hand-drawn sound effect is night and day better if you can get away with it.
And it's so much nicer, right?
Well, not to take anything away. I think computer lettering, you can do really good computer sound effects, but it's a skill, man. Like, and
it's all different aesthetics with different like peaks.
Absolutely,
but maybe
Shonen Jump lettering is just so far away from this, let alone from anything else. Too, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like the way Shonen Jump books are lettered, even in the Japanese, the sound effects being integrated into the art and usually being so huge because the action's so huge, like they give Marvel Comics a run for their money for sure in a lot of different ways, I think. In fact, sound effects I feel like have been getting sort of smaller and further away in superhero comics because they kind of read as cartoony, maybe in a way that I feel like the books are trying to move away from. But I don't know. I'm not the biggest expert there.
I was just reading Hellboy in Hell. I got like the paperback, and then I learned about Artisan editions, which is the black and white original art version. So you can see,
it's nice, eh?
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost like $100 like the big versions. But I was marveling at the sound effects in that because a lot of them are very tiny, maybe it's a font, maybe it's handwritten, but very neat little like boom or doom or that kind of thing. And they're not bombastic in that Kirby way, but like they're so perfect for the setting. And I think that speaks to the freedom you have in comics. I think you can do pretty much any kind of lettering if it makes sense for the story you want to tell. And I think the superhero comics, as they've matured for, in whichever direction, kind of don't maybe want the full like Walt Simonson,
John Workman.
Yeah, John Workman. I can't believe I forgot his name. I love that guy. The Crack of Doom,
Yeah. I mean, when it's part of the design, it really works. Like Frank Quitely does his own lettering for sound effects in his comic pages, and it's gorgeous, and it works within the environment and utilizes the environment as well. I find with Marvel stuff, like I throw in sound effects in my scripts as often as I feel are necessary to get the feeling across. But a lot of times my fight with an editor is I drop them for punches. Because like when a guy just punches another guy, because I'm just like, well, there's no pow sound. Like that's not actually a thing. Like if you've actually seen a street fight and you've seen someone like, or been on the receiving end, like the sound is a lot subtler than a pow. And so if you want to give a little bit of realism to a scene, then you drop sound effects for stuff like that and increase them for a car revving up or something like that for the environments. Yeah. I've sometimes I'll if I have a real specific thing in mind, I will actually letter the page in the Marvel book. Like nice. I did it once for Daredevil because I had an effect at the end of an issue where it was like Matt Murdock, Daredevil at home, and he's basically just making constant 911 calls. He's no longer Daredevil, but he's got all these phones, he's making all these calls because he's hearing all these crimes. And the final page is just a visual representation of what he's hearing, and it's just like all overlaid dialogues throughout the city
Mm.
in different kind of colors and fading in and out. And it was such a specific thing that I knew I mean, I love our letterer, Clayton. He's amazing. He's like one of the industry's best.
Oh, yeah.
But when you have something so specific in your head, you don't want to, if you can do it, you just do it. You don't want to necessarily ask Clayton to do it and then go back and go, actually, more like this. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to go in and do it yourself.
And maybe it's a little weird we're talking about lettering, but I think it speaks to like the quality of the lettering and also the quality of the book.
Yeah.
Well, it's flopped too. I forgot about this.
Yeah.
Oh,
I had some trouble.
Did you? Tell me more.
Because there's always a joke about, like, how do you learn to read comics backwards? Are you reading manga, blah, 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 blah. And normally I have no trouble going back and forth because the obvious cue is like color comics versus black and white. But when I read black and white manga that's been flopped, it's like, wait, I've done 20,000 pages in the other direction since the last time I did. So for the first couple of stories, I'd have a moment of where I would read like the bottom right-hand corner first or something like that.
Yeah.
Or not first, but like, before reading the bottom left.
I mean, that's a ton of work, right? Like, flopping the art, doing the hand lettering. They put a lot of, and then getting people to localize the dialogue. Like taking great care to localize it. Like, one thing that I thought was really interesting was in some of the early chapters, there are little Easter eggs that call out different people in manga. On page 95, there's the boss who goes out of town to leave his cat with him. His name is Fred Rickshot.
So he is named after famous manga writer Frederick Schott, whose manga we are reading as the first book of the year this year.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And he was probably employed by Dark Horse at the time.
There's like a call out to Trina, and that's probably Trina Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of them like it. But there was one that I couldn't figure out. There's like on page 341, the Freeman reaction. Who's Freeman?
Oh, it's Flehmen reaction.
What's that?
It's Flehman. I have a hunch this issue came out and they couldn't like Google it. They just went off to katakana. Because it's what cats do when they smell something gross. It's like a weird stare.
Oh, it's a real word.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. But the
way, like in here, what was the page number?
341.
341, yeah. No, yeah, they basically, this was a mistake, maybe? Because it sounds like a scientist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like the cosmos explanation, but no, it's just the weird face cats make sometimes.
Oh, wow. So it would have been katakanaized and
as like just Flehmen reaction. Yeah.
Put that in the show notes.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like you can see some changes in translation decision, like in when the big fat cat comes in, like page 137, it's called Nyazilla, which is like a pun on nya, which is like meow. But then you go to 353, the same character is called Catzilla. It's kind of like Donbo and Cardbo.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that when staff changes and little things slip through the localization. Like it's not super great from a production perspective, but
as an artifact.
Yeah.
Like choices were made, and this is like an artifact of those choices.
That's one of the things that made me. I can talk about this. So when I was at Viz, there was a decision made to reprint one of the older manga that was there, and it had like old Torrance Smith lettering on it. I can't remember which title it was now, but they were going to reprint it, and all the old manga, from this area was flopped. Like it was flopped to read in the American orientation, and basically scanning all those pages, cutting out, and then repasting the lettering in would have been something like 5 times as expensive as just getting someone to re-letter it at the contemporary lettering rate on the unflopped page, or like because they got new data in from the publisher, and they're like, all right, they could just send it to production and lettering, and it's just like the whole production idea of having to rescan from like flats or maybe even the printed book, like 1,000 pages of manga, and then manually cut out the old word balloons and put them onto the new digital pages. It was just like the expense of it is insane. Like we literally can't do it.
Like at best, it would have been in the Quark Express or something.
Like at best. But even then, I don't think a lot of those files exist. I'm not trying to tell tales of the school, but yeah, I think they would have had to rescan from flats. So it's a weird thing, and it's what makes like original printings of manga so interesting to me. If you can get like the older printings of the flip stuff, because I think I don't know. I don't think we have an appreciation. I think actually it's maybe just David that has a nostalgia for how manga used to look in North America during those early years of translation and production, and really treating it like, I don't know, it's a difference between like a good set of subtitles on an old movie and like Netflix's like, one size fits all kind of bullshit half translated stuff that they do. And it's just, is what it is. There's not much you can do, but I do like digging through bins and looking at like old issues. Super Manga Blast that this ran in, and the later stuff ran in. Like you could find those in bins for like 25 cents an issue, even though they're like big, thick 96-page books and stuff like that. So
yeah,
but yeah, I remember. So weird, digging up some weird memories.
And it's interesting because technically, I imagine the relettered version would have been more like quote unquote true to the Japanese in terms of like,
and
looking
they
closer.
retranslated a lot of that stuff too. That's the other side of it, is that all these books were like 144 page books that were $16.95 or $18.95 each, back in the 90s, that are now like barely $9.99, for collections. Or this book, which is like 600 pages, was like $30 or something like that. $20 is crazy.
I really like the stuff like that. Yeah, we talked about it a bit with Akira, how there are like differences between the Marvel version, the original Japanese, and the like Dark Horse Kodansha sets.
Yeah,
all that stuff. I do wish other people cared about it, because it's so interesting to me.
Yeah,
because I don't think either is necessarily wrong, but they're like making different decisions that were right for that moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Nowadays, yeah.
The idea of what translation was changed a lot over the last 30 years as well. Like because the fans changed. Fans think that they don't want localization a lot of the time.
They don't want to be able to tell that it's localization, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wish that they could read Japanese ultimately, but failing that, I think there has to be decisions that are made in translation. And this is a weird thing, because you could see how the translation is changing over the time. You could see how many people worked on this just over the first 6 volumes of it changed hands a lot of times, and a lot of different processes and stuff. Yeah, it's maybe one of the weirdest books we've covered for that, but I don't know. I feel like, have we talked about the lettering enough? Should we talk about the actual book again some more?
Yeah.
I was going to argue that the way for humor, localization is a must. Because if you did it literally, you would lose the humor and the jokiness of it. Like there's some flavor going on here. And I think to what David was saying, sometimes the lettering choices, the hand lettering, makes it even funnier. Like the fight scenes with all this kind of stuff. Like it just adds adds kind of nice atmosphere to it, or just kind of emphasizes, it complements his very elastic visual storytelling.
Absolutely.
Makes it more fun. Well, speaking of elastic storytelling, does any of you have a favorite story, or thought we think, wow, that's pretty smart? I've never seen a cat comment like that, or like, I thought this was really funny. It's really interesting.
I love this cat doesn't speak Japanese joke. Because I lived in Spain in high school for a while. Yeah. So of course we had the joke that our dog, she couldn't, understand us. I thought that was really good. Mostly it was every time a cat made a face, and then also the Fugitive story.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Because we used to love The Fugitive, as, it was like a family movie as a kid. And so I forgot that there was a parody of it in here, and it's so strange to see in 2023. Oh, and the dancing. It's the kind of book where I would flip through and find a different favorite for every 100 pages.
Yeah. The dancing one is really good.
It's gorgeous.
With the ribbon?
So well drawn.
Yeah.
No, well, the one where they're all looking at the camera and doing that like old-timey Japanese dances. But the ribbon one is good.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that one.
194 is the old-timey dance one. It starts with the photography session.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, there's a little detail where the dad tosses a handkerchief into the air on 197.
Yes.
And it's such a good comedic bit. Like
Yeah.
it's meaningless, but it's so, I don't know, so of the moment, so in there.
That's great.
My favorite is probably the ones where the inherent nature of cats screw up their lives when they're trying to do real human things, like the cat boardroom or the cats playing baseball. That one, that kind of killed me because it's just like Michael's getting called out on being bad at his job, and he just sort of starts grooming himself and pretending he can't hear when he's getting yelled at. Like, that's pretty great. That's a lot of fun. I liked that a lot. Chipper, do you have a fave?
There's a lot, but like one that I really appreciated was the living together one on 149, where the guy addresses the reader about how he likes cats but doesn't think that they're people. And then it just goes through his day with Michael doing the humans only, cat only thing, but they're basically doing exactly the same thing. And the final gag of them in the same pose and in their respective beds killed me on 154. I quite like that. There's one panel that I probably loved over all of them. One of the early ones where Michael's sick and he has to go to the vet.
Yeah.
Most of it's just like, oh yeah, trying to get a cat to the vet. Oh, it's so hard. But the payoff panel at 105, where he gives the injection and it's in Michael's arm, laid right over the human's arm. At 105, it's such a good panel. It's so funny.
Like diabolical writing.
Yeah, it's great.
On 107, just after that one, is one I related to a lot because it's basically my relationship with cats, which is that I just want to eat and be left in peace, and the cats really like me for that reason.
Yeah.
Like it's happened repeatedly where I will accidentally befriend a cat, and then I'm stuck.
Yeah, huge mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter what I do, like it's still really hard for me to get up with a cat sleeping on my lap. Like I feel like I'm just ruining its day. And it's like, no, like why am I thinking like this? Like they'll just go right back to sleep somewhere else.
Yeah.
I know.
But somehow it makes it really hard.
Also, Michael's face when he saw Popo on 127. When they're like, we got you, she's going to be your wife someday. And his reaction shot, it's super good.
Yeah, I'm a little grossed out too, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't say enough about the drawing in this. Like,
I gotta be honest,
good.
the drawing gets so much better as it goes too. Like the later volumes and the stories that I'm thinking of are just so tight. He's good in this, don't get me wrong, but I think later stories he gets even better. Maybe not at drawing Michael, like the cats are really great in this, but the humans, especially, he just gets so good at drawing them.
Yeah, the humans are the one part of this where I'm like, they're all a little bit off. Hasn't quite nailed the human face, but like the cats are absolutely perfect. Which is so weird. Usually it's the opposite.
Unlike the dogs who look stupid every time they show up. Oh, this guy is definitely a cat person, kind of.
Yeah.
I did like the one that Kip mentioned where they're watching TV and there's like a little window in the bottom of the TV where the cat is like doing translation. But I've never seen that in a cat comic. That's so smart. The other one I liked was the wordless one on 333, A Place to Sit, where Michael's trying to find some place to sleep and he gets chased from room to room until finally the only place left for him that's okay for him to sit is on a magazine in an empty lot. It's really cute. It's kind of a little sad, but it's like, it's, 'cause that's the difference between what's Michael and maybe like Garfield and Heathcliff. It's like Garfield and Heathcliff are a little bit too smart for their own good sometimes.
Yeah.
Or they're kind of like a little, they kind of look down on the people around them like, these dumbass humans, I'm the one who's calling all the shots here. And Garfield ain't far from wrong. What's the name of the guy?
John.
John is not the brightest bulb in the sockets,
Yeah.
He's pretty derpy, yeah.
And in Heathcliff's world, I mean, Heathcliff is just like, I'm like the Fonz, like I'm the coolest cat around. I can walk on 2 feet and I barely tolerate you people, but you feed me,
Yeah, like Heathcliff's not even really a cat. Like,
Like an old man.
yeah. They just they made the cat so cool that it's no longer a cat, which kind of kills a lot of what should make Heathcliff a good strip.
Have you all read much modern Heathcliff?
It's a little surreal, ain't it?
It's basically turned into like, if you could condense What's Michael into one panel each week, like that's the Heathcliff strips now.
Okay.
Because there's one, like there's some like frog he keeps seeing, and he's like, there's Jim, and he's pointing at a billboard that has the frog's face on it, and that's the entire strip, like the entire punchline.
And he gets paid for this shit.
Surreal.
Yeah, probably very well. The Father's Day strip this week was unbelievable because it was Heathcliff and his dad wearing like prison clothes. So I guess he's just broken out of jail. They steal some fish from a fish market, like they fight some dogs, they go through some trash, all like synchronized, like synced up. And then they're sitting on a hill under a tree, and there are two birds in the tree above them. And one of the birds says, "My dad used to puke in my mouth. Happy Father's Day."
That's pretty good.
And then
Oh
it
my
shouts
God.
out Maddie Root of Fayetteville, North Carolina's cat Lucy, with like a little caricature. It's unbelievable.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
So yeah, surreal is the right word. I think it's moved away from Heathcliff being cool to just being like, what kind of non sequitur can we get away with this week? You know?
That's
maybe
flippin' amazing.
maybe I should get into Heathcliff again.
I honestly, it's worth flipping through like the last, I don't know, month or so of strips to see if anything makes you laugh, because it gets pretty weird.
Is it the same person making it?
It's
Or-
Peter Gallagher now, so it must have changed over. Heathcliff has been around for ages at this point.
Yeah.
But it's so far from the old stuff.
Weird. Like, there's a bunch of strips in a row that are about saving the world, and then a bunch about taking over the world. I'm just looking at another window. Heathcliff has gotten weird. This is a weird strip.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Time to bookmark some Heathcliff.
It's
My.
also, I think a lot of it is clip art based, where he has certain like set panels or set angles, and he can just kind of like plop a character in, plop a punchline at the bottom, sort of a thing.
Well, why wouldn't he, right? It's a great time saver.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, modern Garfield.
It's not like, the world of Heathcliff changes very much. Like, it's not like Heathcliff goes to Italy, kind of thing.
He's on an alien spaceship in one of the ones I just read. Like,
Is he?
there's a lot going on in Heathcliff that maybe we all been sleeping on Heathcliff. It's not. It's
not
weird too.
Yeah.
Because What's Michael became a meme. Like a lot of those stories that we're talking about are fresh in our minds because they got posted all over the internet for a little while, and then Garfield a little while back became like the biggest meme, where it was like Garfield without Garfield, and it just made John look like the saddest, craziest, loneliest person.
Which I think I've mentioned on this podcast before is an idea I came up with in high school.
What?
Oh, really?
In which I went through my Garfield books and I erased all of Garfield's thought bubbles. Because I'm like, John can't hear his thoughts. No one can hear his thoughts. And it reads so weird when it's just Garfield not talking and you can't hear his thoughts. Because it's usually just like John says something to Garfield, nothing happens, and then John looks at camera with like a kind of expression, as if he heard his thoughts, which he couldn't hear. So anyways, when I interviewed Jim Davis years later, it was actually kind of around the time of, because Jim Davis published Garfield minus Garfield. Like because he saw this happening and he reached out to people who were doing it and he offered to publish it because he thought it was funny. And I told him that I came up with it in high school, and he said that he invented the pet rock when he was a kid, and he was so upset when the pet rock became a fad in the 70s, so he felt my pain.
My Garfield minus Garfield was great because my friend Gavin, when we ran Fourth Letter, our comics website together, he did Dark Side minus Dark Side, or Dark Side minus New Gods. So it's just Darkseid ranting alone in rooms and in chairs and things. And it was like legit the funniest thing I saw for like 2 years.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent.
That's got a pretty good Adult Swim vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how Garfield is just timeless, though.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, even within this 6 volumes of What's Michael, like, there's definitely change happening in how the stories are being told. Also, I kind of feel bad for making Deb recommend that we read a 600-page book, because I've actually carried this across 3 continents. I'm glad it was interesting.
Nice.
But yeah, it does change a lot. I feel like, and the kinds of stories he's telling are definitely getting weirder just by the end of this volume. And apparently the Fat Cat Collection Volume 2 wraps up the original serialization. It's volume 7 to 11. And it's like, yeah, I kind of want to read it now, actually.
Yeah.
Just to see?
Just to see, because it seems to be going in a direction.
I think with any long-running series, like we talked about how artists change over the course of the series, and that like kind of demonstrated on the podcast. But you discover not just like how far you can take your story, but also like what you're interested in as time goes on.
Yeah.
So I bet he was like, dang, like people really don't mind if I do Space What's Michael's story. So I should do more of those to see what happens.
But you know what's kind of amazing too is like this is obviously one of the most successful series that he's ever worked on. But he didn't keep creating What's Michael's stories. Like he stopped and he made other things. He drew other types of manga. Like this was not the beginning and end of his career as a cartoonist, which is kind of interesting because, you know, normally, you know, it's like, well, why mess with success? You know, he could be like Jim Davis and draw Garfield for the rest of his life, but he didn't. And I don't know why. And I think it's interesting.
What did he follow this up with?
Oh, a couple of things, eh?
So this was started in 84. And then in order, he did, it's hard to tell because this is not being listed in order. Hold on one sec. I'll see if I can figure it out. The one I was talking about with Club 9 is about a girl that works at a hostess club who moves to the big city and ends up working at a hostess club, which is kind of like, I don't know, it could be a stepping stone to like a ne'er-do-well sort of lifestyle, but she's so good-hearted and country bumpkinish that she kind of makes it work. It was only partially translated. I think they only did 3 of the volumes. It was a lot of fun. Born in 58. Yeah, What's Michael was his like biggest possible hit, but he also did a bunch of other stuff. He worked on What's Michael while he was working on other comics too, called Judo Club Story and a couple of other things too.
The character who is Nyazilla's adopted family in the sushi restaurant, the guy with the big eyebrows, that's the character from the judo manga.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So they all take place in the Michael verse.
I guess so. It's just fascinating to me that, you know, like I said, this was first came out in 1984. And then he really only did 9 volumes.
Yeah, the Japanese editions don't match up with the Dark Horse editions.
This is a peer to Akira in that case.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think early Dragon Ball, maybe Dr. Slump in 84.
Oh my God, I'm reading the profile of it. It says, What's Michael won the 10th Kodansha Manga Award for General Manga in 1986, an award it's shared with Message to Adolf by Osamu Tezuka.
Wow. Still alive when this was coming out. That's wild.
Oh, man.
Well, there you go. That's
also what a
who
good
says we
pair.
don't do classic manga, right?
Let's go around the table because I think we've kind of given this big book a good round of conversation. Let's start again with Chip. You want to close off? Your closing thoughts?
Yeah, it's very similar to my opening thoughts. It's a gorgeous book. The cats are beautifully cartooned, solid gags throughout. I didn't quite notice the lettering until David pointed out, and now it's all I see. And I still say, you know, besides, you know, a couple of questionable choices in here about, you know, Michael trying to have sex with an underage cat, I still think this is good for kids. And you know what? It's a Parents' Choice Award winner. I notice on the back, so I can't be wrong.
You're vindicated there,
yeah. So, anyways, I quite like it. It might not be the thing that I kind of continue, but it's definitely a high recommendation for me for people who are into cats or of an age to appreciate this.
How about you, David?
On page 205, Lionel Richie stars in The New Car, where a cat just messes up his brand new, like, you know, wax or shine and wax job. And all I could think reading it was the manga explaining team can see there's like an Icona Pop poster in my room over here.
yeah.
Trying to point with a stupid camera. When I got that poster, I had a roommate who had a cat, and I left the poster out overnight after coming home from the concert to like flatten it out. And when I got up, the cat was sleeping in the middle of it, and it's been creased ever since. And I was like, oh, this is the most realistic cat bit in the entire book of just the endless terror on something you want to be pristine. Yeah, very relatable, very funny, extremely well drawn. Like, there's so many brands and like parody stuff in here that I don't think you could actually do nowadays. That it makes me laugh. But just the mayhem, the sheer amount of mayhem, was really making me laugh.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, this was a fun one. I enjoyed What's Michael. I haven't had a cat for a really, really long time, but it still rung very true to my previous pet semi-ownership, my shared roommate pet ownership. So that was nice. Yeah, I kind of do want to go and see if the second volume improves on what we got here or moves in a direction. But even the cover of this is just like so weird and good with all the cats doing the like dance pose that I feel like it's a good one. Go out and read What's Michael for your funny cat comedy. Just again, don't try and read it all in 2 days. There's too many pages.
Reading this again, because this was one of the first manga that was available in English. So it was something I remember reading way back when it first came out. And it's so nice to revisit it again and still see that it still works. Kind of like how Ranma 1/2 still works and it's still hilarious. That's so nice. Also, I've had cats almost nonstop since I've moved out of my parents' house.
Yeah.
And between Timmy, who was the cat about town who visited all my neighbors and got a dinner at every house in the block. It's kind of Michael. But also I have Sunny and Frankie who are like just crazy, just nuts. They'll bounce off the walls and they'll climb up the bookcase and fly and they'll do all kinds. And because they're brothers, they try to beat each other at eating. So the one cat will eat so much he'll throw up later. Like, oh my God, they're just cats. They're just so cats. So there's so many things like I read now and I'm thinking like, yeah, this is Sunny and Frankie.
Everything you just mentioned happens in this book. So those are some pretty catty cats you got there.
They are cats among cats. As brothers, they seem to make each other cat up even more. So, well, anyway, cat manga. I would say I can't get enough of it, but actually that's a lie. I can.
Yeah. Is this at 600 pages? You hit your limit?
There's kind of some so-so cat manga out there.
Other cat manga, not this cat manga.
This is a great one, and I really enjoy it, and it was fun to read it again. So thanks for, I guess, kind of peer pressuring me into recommending it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will be back in a little bit with, I don't know, something. Stay tuned.
At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's learning environments are designed for supportive networking and collaboration. With over 330 academic programs, GCU provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
All right, and we are back, and I guess we're going to do shout-outs? Or
No.
Oh, okay.
No shout-outs.
No shout-outs.
For once, I have a manga-splaining mailbag question.
Ooh.
For the crew.
Nice.
Whoa.
I know. As you know, I am friends with legendary comic book writer Matt Fraction, and he had a question for me, and he wanted me to pose it to the manga experts here, and I'm just going to read it off my screen. Hey, chum, can you ask the manga-splaining crew if Miyazaki's Porco Rosso ever got an English publication? Or if they may happen to know if it's gettable or findable at all in print? I've Googled and failed. So he's a failure, and I want to know how much of a failure he is from you three.
I got to admit, I got nothing on this one. Porco Rosso's the one that says better a pig than a fascist?
Yes, that is that particular meme.
I like where that's going.
So Porco Rosso is the Hayao Miyazaki film about Crimson Pig. It's about a guy who's cursed to look like a pig by he does something and gets cursed, but then he just becomes like a World War II flying ace fighting against the fascists basically in Italy. So, that's pretty fun. But there isn't a direct comic prequel or a comic that it's based on. It's not like Nausicaa. But what it did have was Nausicaa stories would run an anime magazine called Animage, and after that, he was actually also doing these sort of elaborate, sort of comics, sort of technical drawings of like planes and tanks and weird military stuff. Some of it was real and some of it was stuff that he would invent. And he would have these little, basically pig characters he started drawing as like the people piloting the planes and the tanks and things like that. Sometimes they would get short comics out of them. And those comics are collected in a book called Daydream Data Note, depending on how it gets translated.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a lot of fun. They're really interesting. Bad news for Matt, unfortunately, is that they're only available in Japanese. And worse news for Matt is that not only are they not available in Japanese, they're out of print, like even in Japan. They're actually getting more and more expensive. The last time I was at a Mandarake in Japan, they were going, the Daydream Data Note, the second printing, which has extra stuff in it, an extra story in it, was going for over $100. And that was the last time I checked was a couple of years ago. If he wants to get it, he might want to get it ASAP. I've got worse news too.
Whoa.
Jeez.
Matt Fraction is going to die by midnight.
So here's a weird thing. I was like, while at Viz, hey, Viz is publishing so many great, beautiful art books by Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, so Takahata Sensei and so many different people. Why haven't you guys done the collected editions of like Daydream Data Note or the little book that's the Proto Nausicaa book? And they're like, oh, we tried, and they said it's not available. There's nothing we can do. I'm sorry. But so yeah, I got an official no that they couldn't do Daydream Data Note. And then a funny thing happened, and First Second published one of those books that I asked about that they said weren't available earlier this year. And or late last year, I guess. It's called Shuna's Journey. And it's a full color, painted watercolor Hayao Miyazaki, pretty much a manga, but kind of not, that he did before he did Nausicaa. Has the same kind of themes and ideas and things like that, but it's only one book. And that blew my mind, because if that came out, maybe anything actually really is possible.
Oh, I have a little backstory on that one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Miami Book Festival asked me to interview the translator.
Oh, wonderful.
For Shuna's Journey. And I got Helen McCarthy to join in because she's kind of like this Miyazaki expert, because I'm not. But I asked him, how'd you do this? And he goes, oh, I just asked.
Classic move.
And then I took it to First Second and they said yes. I went, what? Okay.
That is wild for reasons that I can't go into. So we'll leave that there. So yeah, anything's possible, but if you are Matt Fraction and you want to own a copy of that book, which is legitimately beautiful, try to buy the second printing of it. It's called Daydream Note or Daydream Data Note. The second edition has an extra story in it. And the manga is called The Return of Hans. And again, it is a prototype version of the Porco Rosso story. It is not it's not like the comic of Porco Rosso, but yeah, I love his hand-drawn stuff so much more than I love, like, his animation is obviously beautiful, but like this period of like 1980s, 1990s kind of crazy little technical drawings and stuff like that. I just love that stuff that he does. Like Ghibli Museum in
his
Japan
Image Comics era.
Yeah, there you go. It's great. So yeah, see if you can find it. It's a pretty fun book, but sorry I didn't have better news.
I mean, Matt did say to me too that there are a few pages from it in the movie art book.
Oh.
Yeah, it's this kind of thing. It's not there's not actually a real comic. But the movie art book's gorgeous too.
I don't know anything about Porco Rosso, but when I was talking to Matt, I Googled and I was like, okay, now I'm very interested, because the first thing that came up was Michael Keaton as Porco Rosso.
Really?
Yeah.
I will Google that. I haven't seen that.
Wait, wasn't he the English voice actor for it?
Is that why?
Yeah.
Oh, the Disney dubs.
I guess so, yeah. It just has a photo of Michael Keaton and Michael Keaton, Porco Rosso. I'm like, what?
All the Disney versions of the Miyazaki films, they spared no expense to get name brand voice actors.
That's wild. I don't watch dubs, so I wouldn't know.
Me neither. Ha ha.
Wow.
I hate dubs. I hate dubs.
Even when they're done by Michael Keaton?
Especially when they're done by Michael Keaton.
Cold-blooded.
Brad Garrett was Mama someone.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's Mama Oto. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. Brad Garrett.
Brad Garrett from Two Stupid Dogs? No. I'll probably have to cut that out. Never mind.
This episode's weird. This is a weird episode.
It's a funny episode.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair. Well, we tried. That actually was a good question because I had not heard of this before either. And so originally my response was, well, Matt, sometimes there are anime that don't come from manga.
But no, this one actually has beautiful illustrations that aren't still exactly what you're looking for.
Maybe if you knock on a Studio Ghibli's door at just the right moment, they'll say yes.
I got one extra thing here, and this is for David.
Yeah.
Grandpa Piccolo, David Ogden Steers from MASH.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now are you interested, Christopher?
I think we need to hear this dub. It's a manga-splaining episode.
Is it still on Disney Plus, or we'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I actually I still have I think I kept all the Miyazaki DVDs when I moved. I'm not sure. Maybe they're still in a box at my parents' house. Or anyway.
I Googled Brad Garrett while we were talking, by the way. And he is the big dog from Two Stupid Dogs, which is a very funny cartoon from when I was a kid. Like 93 to 95. And it's like a ludicrous place for me to know him from, looking at the rest of the things he's done over the course of his career.
That's great.
Amazing.
Well, I think that's a good place to call it a day with another episode of Mangasplaining. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for indulging us in this little bit of cat and pig discussion. We'll see you next time.
At me and I feel complete. Then you come at me like the Wolverine. And even though you often turn your back on me, our love goes deeper than a submarine. No, I don't want clay dust inside of you, or chemicals in the place you poo. In my arms or in your box, our love will be pure.
World's best cat litter for the world's best cat.
Save big money on your flooring project, now at Menards. Give any room a fresh look with durable Mohawk tile. Mohawk features over 350 ceramic, porcelain, mosaic, and glass tile options. Montrose Porcelain Tile has a unique design to provide long-lasting charm to any space. Save big money on Mohawk Porcelain Tile from Menards. Visit us in-store and menards.com to check out all the great deals going on this week.
Save